Hello and welcome to CarWale, and this is the Maruti Suzuki Jimny in 5-door, guys. Now we've already brought a first look of the car to you. That was in a showroom. It was in the kinetic yellow color, and now we've got the red, and I think it looks especially fetching in red. Now we have this car for the whole day. We have driven it a little on the road, a little off the road, and we will continue to do that in the course of this day. And through this review, we will tell you what's good, what's not so good, how it is to drive, how does it feel, how's the ride comfort, how's the seating, all of that. If you are looking to buy the Jimny, we will tell you whether it's worth it or not. But that's not all. We're also going to bring in a perspective about if you were to buy the Jimny as your only car. So is it a good daily driver? Can it fit your family in? Can it take you to the mall? Apart from, of course, going off-roading and adventurous activities. So we'll look into all of that, and to bring that into perspective, we will compare it to the Brezza. So stick around because that's what we have for you towards the end of the video. And now let's get into it and start with the styling of the Jimny. Now, the Jimny isn't very big on road presence. That doesn't mean that it's not a good looking car. I think it is very endearing, especially when you look at its, cute puppy-like headlamps. It's got a very nice, cute face. And the proportions are typically old school boxy that you'd expect in an SUV. But when you put it on the road, when you put it, with other vehicles on the road, it does show its size or the lack of it. Now, in the wilderness, of course, it's no problem. It looks, handsome standing here. But just to give you a perspective, I'm 5'8", so I'm not very tall, but I can completely eclipse the car with its width. So, it's not very wide. Similarly, if I were to stand right next to it, just to give you an idea, so it's not very tall. Its competitor, let's say the Thar, because that's what most people will compare it with or will look at it. One of the main things for the Thar, the things that why people are buying it, is because of its butch look, its size, which this unfortunately doesn't have. Now, having said that, the Jimny still has a lot of likable elements which it has borrowed from Jimnys of yore, previous generation Jimnys, and that gives it that additional character. So you've got these round headlamp, you've got the 5-slat grille, you've got this clamp shell bonnet, something that we've seen in the Gypsy. Similarly, these slats here. And then overall, the ground clearance of 210 might not seem a lot for an off-roader, but it gives it just the right stance to, make it very appealing every time you look at it. Preferably in a surround like this, and I think the Jimny will check the right boxes in terms of visual appeal. Furthermore, the whole function over form philosophy Maruti has chosen for the Jimny leaves it feeling a bit cheap at places. The keyhole on the outside, the afterthought that is the proximity lock and unlock button, and the cost-effective but not so nice or handy door handles make the Jimny seem like it's built to a cost. The fact that the doors lack heft and the door closing feels light and loose doesn't help matters either. Inside, in this top spec Alpha trim, the Jimny gets a decent amount of kit. You get a large touchscreen for the multimedia, there's a single zone automatic climate control system, the steering adjusts for rake and gets controls for audio and cruise, there's ESP and 6 airbags taking care of the safety kit, and of course the Jimny comes with a complete deck of off-road hardware. It gets a low-range transfer box for serious off-roading. It has brake lock differentials to further this cause. It gets hill descent and tow hooks both front and back to help pull the SUV out in case it gets stuck. Now, the Jimny might get traditional instrumentation, but the driver information system thankfully displays more than just the odo and trip readings. Getting in and out is a breeze. You step into the SUV and you'd expect that given it has this old school construction of body on ladder. And if you are tall, there is a possibility that you might hit your knee on the steering column when you enter. It has happened to me a few times and I'm not very tall. And this is even when the steering is in the highest position. But once you're settled, once you're in the seat, you realize that the seat is cushy, it's comfy, and we've spent a day in this, and it's not like we're tired. It is decently supportive, and you can spend long hours in this, so that's good. Plus, the driving position is pretty good. As you know, the seat doesn't adjust for height, but the steering does. But even so, you get a very good, very positive driving position, which means you've got you can sit more upright. You have a nice bend in your arm, and plus the visibility up front is good. Visibility for the clocks is good. So it is a good driving position. And the Jimny being a narrow car, it scores well on ergonomics because everything is less than an arm's length away. Whether you want to reach for the glove box, whether you want to reach for the touchscreen, even if you want to adjust the air vents, or if you want to help your passenger wear the seatbelt. But everything is just so close. So good score ergonomically, nice comfy seats, you can spend time in it. And now let's see how it is at the back. Now at the back, the seats are obviously smaller, and but surprisingly, the front seat is set to my driving position, and as you can see, there is plenty of knee room. The seat scope is small, so you don't get as much thigh support, but otherwise, for me, headroom is good, knee room is good, and of course, this is a 4-seater, not a 5-seater, so for 4 people or 2 people at the back, the space is adequate. I wouldn't say it's great, because when a person similar size sits alongside, and we've tried that, we do rub shoulders, but it's not like we're getting into each other. So reasonable space for 4 people, no doubt, even for 2 people at the back. But because the rear doors are really small, getting in and out of the rear is not as easy as it is at the front, and it's actually not easy at all, and we would have liked that to be better, but of course you can't do anything about that. But that's what it is. So it is a little challenging there, and the backrest doesn't adjust, so it is a little upright, and I honestly haven't spent enough time at the back to say whether it will be comfortable in the long, for longer hours over longer journeys. But a little adjustability here would have helped. And yeah, so it is a small car, but it can seat 4 quite easily. It doesn't feel very spacious though, courtesy the all black interiors and the small glass area all around. Speaking of small, the boot space again isn't anything to write home about, but it is good for more than just carry-on luggage. But more significantly, it is more usable and spacious than the Thar's boot. Now, the Jimny's cabin clearly has its pluses, but it's not without its shortcomings. The front door pockets, for instance, are useless. There aren't enough storage spaces in the cabin to empty out even one's pocket. Finding a place to put the cell phone alone is a struggle. And there are only 2 cup holders between 4 occupants, and not a single proper bottle holder. There is also very little room in the driver's footwell. Add to it a throttle pedal which isn't well positioned, and one is looking at unnecessary fatigue over longer drives. Additionally, the overall look and feel of materials needed to be better given what the asking price of the Jimny will be. We understand that this Maruti's interior will be subjected to more abuse than usual, but that is no reason not to give nicer finish trim. The Jimny is only available with one engine option, and there is no diesel on offer. The engine is the 1.5-litre 4-cylinder naturally aspirated petrol that we have seen on Brezzas, Ciazes and Ertigas of yore. So in that sense, it is a reliable, proven engine. It's not the most powerful or exciting engine, mind you. It makes around 105 bhp and 134 Newton meters of torque. The gearbox options, be it the 5-speed manual or the 4-speed automatic, again aren't anything to write home about. But the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in eating it. So we will soon find out what this means on the road and off it. But for now, other mechanicals on the Jimny include a ladder frame chassis that is suspended on rigid 3-axle suspension with coil springs both front and rear. The steering is a recirculating ball type instead of a rack and pinion we are used to on almost every car or SUV on sale on the market. The tyres are 195 section road-going Bridgestones, which seem a tad puny for an off-roader. An all-terrain tyre with a hint more width, maybe a 215 section, would have done wonders for the Jimny's look. Not that this 195 section road-going tyre mattered at all during our off-road drive. Now, off-road, the Jimny is brilliant, but you'd expect that. I mean, it is, after all, its claim to fame. Now, we're on a trail. It's a bumpy trail. We're in too high. You don't need four-wheel drive just yet. And we're going at a decent pace, 30-40 kilometers per hour. But the suspension works so beautifully that you don't get thrown around, you don't get thumped about. So if you just decide to take on a trail, the Jimny suspension setup, it might be a slightly basic one with a 3-link rigid axle with coil springs. But even so, I think for most part, a trail like this, it works well. And then the beauty of the Jimny really is that you don't really have to. The rear does kick about a bit, but then you don't have any load at the back. But yeah, like I was saying, the beauty of the Jimny is that you don't really need to stick to the trail. Now we're on this trail, we've got a riverbed on the left, and all you have to do is decide that, okay, let me just head and see what there is. And so all you do is just hang a left and you're off. Now, of course, because it's so bumpy, I would shift to 4 high, and you can do that with the car being in gear. But for, of course, 4 low, you'd have to shift it to neutral and then do. And then now we'll try and drive it in 4 high as much as possible and see when we really need 4-wheel low. But this is the car with road tires, but it's phenomenal how it's able to handle the flat trail. And now let's see how it handles the more challenging stuff. Okay, so now I don't know how far we'll be able to go through this, because it does seem like it's got some rocks in the middle, but we'll give it a shot. Like I said, we're in 4 high. It's got hill hold, so that's easy to get started. The other thing about the Jimny is that it's got some fantastic approach and departure angles, and so you're not really worried about scraping it or breaking the bumpers or hitting anything. And then this is the manual, but it has very good clutch feel. It has nice throttle response, so you can modulate it really well, especially when you're going over an obstacle like a rock and you want to roll over slowly. It's easy to do, and that's something that I really like. I did drive the automatic. Automatic is easier to drive off-road, but the manual isn't bad either, and that's good. So it's not going to leave you all tired and after days of off-roading, which is good. Now things have gotten a little slipperier, and so what we're going to do is put it in neutral, press the clutch, press the small shift down, and go to 4 low. Nothing really changes here on the display, so you don't know whether it doesn't really show that you are in 4L like they used to earlier. But and now I don't even have to be on the throttle. It's just moving on its own. We've got this ditch and then climb out, and it's pulling on its own. So that's good. I don't really. Yeah, now it's getting really difficult. So I might not be able to chat a lot, but yeah, I mean, it is extremely impressive what this car can do, and this is on road tires. I can't imagine what it will be like if we were to put 80, not even empty, just all-terrain tires, not mud-terrain tires, and it should be phenomenal. But yeah, off-road, the Jimny is without doubt fantastic fun. Furthermore, its brake clocking differentials work well even with these road-going tires. And though it's a petrol, we didn't really struggle with low-end torque while negotiating steep inclines. We did have to keep the RPM higher than usual, but nothing too demanding. We did find the steering a bit of work nonetheless. It is a bit heavy and it is quite slow. So when making U-turns on tight trails, the many turns lock to lock along with the steering heft did make it a task. On the road, the Jimny feels average at best, especially when you compare it to, let's say, compact SUVs, which is where we honestly feel it should be priced. It has, for starters, you've got a steering that has over 3 turns lock to lock, which means when you're driving in a straight line and you move the steering around, it's like the old Hindi movies where you do move the steering so much and the car continues to go straight. So naturally, it's not as intuitive, it's not as accurate, it's not as quick to respond, and so that takes a little that driving interest out. Then you have the suspension. So it is body on ladder frame SUV. You've got 3-link rigid axle suspension with coil springs. It's designed for good wheel articulation off the road, which means on the road, when you turn it, it rolls quite a bit. It's very perceptible. It's almost like it's leaning onto its tires. And so if you happen to drive around a twisty section, which we did in the morning, there it is quite difficult to, from left to right and right to left, the quick direction changes are a little tedious on the Jimny. Then you have the brakes. The bite is good, the progression is good, the feel is nice, but they come into play a lot later than we would have liked. So you get on the brakes and there's nothing, and then it comes on. So again, like the steering, there is that sort of delay or lack of response that is there. And these are the things that you don't mind off-road, but on the road, it just takes away from that whole driving feel and pleasure. But there are good things about the Jimny on the road. The ride, for one. We have already mentioned that the ride off-road is brilliant, even on the road. The deeper potholes, even the speed breakers that you might miss, it rides over them, glides over them. Of course, the rear kicks sometimes, but if you have people at the back, then it just goes flat over stuff. At slower speeds, you can feel the road irregularities a bit, but again, it is that old school body on ladder or ladder frame feel. It's not as pronounced as we've seen on some other ladder frame SUVs, but you can tell that this is not a monocoque. So it's not all bad, and I think overall ride, anything over 60 kilometers per hour feels nice, feels, I wouldn't say flat, but it is well absorbent. Now, the engine, it is, if you're driving again peacefully off-road or on the road in the city, it's no problem. You can short shift, there's enough torque. But it's only when you want to drive a little faster, you want to drive a little enthusiastically. Now we're in third, 3000 RPM. I get to 4000 RPM, I can hear a lot of engine noise, and it's not like the engine is free revving or smooth. There is that bit of graininess to it, it gets loud. So it's not something you want to do. And that means when you take it on the highway, now we've not been on a expressway kind of or a 4-lane highway, but when you take it there, you will realize that holding, let's say 100, is not going to be as effortless as in some other compact SUVs. So that's something that is there. But again, the whole purpose of the Jimny is that it is an off-roader first and a family car second, and that reflects when you drive it on the road. It's not terrible, it's not bad, it's not something that you can't live with, but it's just something that you need to know that it's not going to be very enjoyable. It's a chore rather than fun, which driving should be. But of course, when you take it off-road, then it completely changes the game. It's tremendous fun. The The gearbox, we have the manual. We also have a 4-speed auto. I haven't tried that. Actually, I did at one of the stages, but not on the road. The manual gearbox, the clutch is light. Again, good feel from the clutch. The gear shifts are reasonably short, but it takes effort to shift, especially when you're moving or shifting to first from a standstill. So it's not the slickest of gearboxes. You have to work at it, and along with the steering that again isn't very light. Overall driving experience, especially what we've been doing around Dehradun, around the hills, through traffic, constant shifting, turning the steering, avoiding traffic, it starts to get tiring. But if you're in stop and go traffic, or if you're on the highway, maybe it won't be as bad. So yeah, overall it's not a great car for the road. You can live with it, but it's not something that you should buy if 90% of your driving or even more is centered around the road. The thing that we do like, which is very car-like, even though the pedal box is tight, there isn't enough place to put your foot after you've clutched, but the relation between the brake and the accelerator pedal is really nice, so you can in fact heel and toe if you choose to, and that brings a bit more involvement, hint of sportiness, which I honestly enjoy, and so that's a good score or a happy check for the Jimny. What do we think of the SUV after spending a whole day with it? Well, a lot of things and a lot of thoughts, but we thought we'll split them or organize them in 3 different parts just so that we are able to communicate it better. We will talk about the fitness of purpose, or what exactly is the Jimny and how well it does that job. We'll talk about the pricing, what it should be, what we believe is good pricing, and what we feel that Maruti might price it at. And then, of course, we will tell you what we promised you right at the start, whether if you were to consider this against the Brezza, is there any reason for you to do that? And let's start, of course, with the fitness of purpose. Now, this is an off-roader, of course. That is the basic premise of this product. But it is not a second car in the house. It is not the third car in the house. It will probably be your only car in the house. And so it will have to do more than just come into the wilderness like this and go over rocks and go through streams. It will have to take you to work. It will have to go to the mall with kids. And it is a 4-seater, so you can, if you're a nuclear family, of course, you can fit people into that. So on that front, I think as an off-roader, there is no doubt. Even with these road tires, it has done phenomenally well in these surroundings. And these are not surroundings that Maruti created. These are natural surroundings, and we've been taking the car wherever we want, and not once has it given us any difficulty in going over stuff. So excellent off-road ability, and that's a big check mark, a big positive for the Jimny. And then we've also spent some time on the road, and of course we've spent time in the cabin, and that's where we realized that it is an average daily driver. It is an average family car. And on that front, I think fitness of purpose, it is an 8 on 10 maybe, because it does the 4x4 bit really well, but the other car bit, your daily driver, your family car bit, it's not able to do that well. So on that front, that's where it stands. And now let's talk about what we feel the pricing should be. So what should the Jimny be priced at? And to figure that out, we need to bring a benchmark into place, or have some competition as to where it might sit. And the first reaction, of course, is because it's an off-roader that it would go up against the Thar. And I don't think that is the correct measurement or the correct benchmark. Yes, of course, it's got 4 doors, so it's a little more practical than the Thar, but the Thar is a completely different animal. When you look at the mechanicals, when you look at the engine, when you look at the interiors, the overall build quality, the Thar is more sophisticated. It is clearly a class above. This one is more basic. And so to bring pricing into perspective, we'd say that Brezza, the Maruti Suzuki Brezza, is a great benchmark in that sense. It uses the same engine, it's got similar gearboxes. Yes, you have 4x4 on that, and you don't on the Brezza, but then the Brezza is more premium. It's got better interior plastics, it's got much nicer seating, it's more comfortable overall, it's easier to drive. And so in a sense, it kind of balances out. Now, the Brezza VXI starts at 9.6. So if we were to look at the entry-level version of the Jimny, the Zeta, let's say it gets, and not let's just say, but we know that Zeta gets lesser features than the Brezza VXI. But let's add this whole lifestyle element, the Jimny element, and the 4x4 running gear into the mix and say, maybe Maruti can charge a 50,000 rupee premium on that. So a good price for this would be around 10.2 lakhs ex-showroom for the Zeta. And then another lakh and a half, so about 11 and a half for this top spec Alpha manual. And I'm talking about manual because we have the manual here. So this is what I feel is good, fair pricing for the Jimny. But of course, indications from Maruti unofficially seem to be that it will be a lot more. They have their sights set on the Thar as an example, and they feel that it is more practical than the Thar, slightly so. But that is asking for too much for what the Jimny is. So between 10.2 to 11.5 is great in terms of pricing. And now to the final piece of the puzzle, whether if you're in the market to buy a compact SUV, the likes of the Brezza, the Nexon, the Hyundai Venue, should you consider the Jimny as an alternative? And we're basing this on the fact that only 10% of users actually take their 4x4s off-road, and this is for Thar, Fortuner, Endeavours, etc. And even those people who do, they don't take it so often. So it has to check the boxes of a family car as much as an off-roader. And like we've said, the Jimny does manage to do that, but it's not excellent at it. It can do it, but it's more on the average front. So it is a big compromise on that front. So it is something you'll need to consider if you think of this as an alternative to the likes of the Brezza or the Venue.